There is a number so large it stops making sense the moment you try to hold it in your mind. Not a government budget, not a national debt, a single person's fortune. And yet, somehow, the most famous fictional billionaire in the world might make even that number look modest. Most people, if you ask them, would say Bruce Wayne is rich the way a movie star is rich. Nice cars, a big house, maybe a jet. They picture someone comfortable, privileged, a little reckless with money. They do not picture someone who could plausibly outrank the wealthiest human beings alive on Earth today. But what if that assumption is wrong? Because when you actually sit down and do the math, when you treat Wayne Enterprises not as a comic book prop, but as a real multinational conglomerate, the number that comes out the other end is not $6 billion. It is not even close. Let's go back to the beginning. Bruce Wayne did not build his fortune. He inherited it. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this story. Inherited wealth compounds differently than earned wealth. Compounding means your money earns returns, and then those returns earn returns, and the whole thing grows exponentially over time, like a snowball rolling downhill that never stops. When you start with enough, you never have to add to the pile. The pile just grows. Bruce's parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, were already among Gotham's most powerful families. The Wayne fortune predates Bruce by generations. By the time he is a child, the foundation is not just large, it is ancient, entrenched, and self-sustaining. This is what old money actually means. Not just wealth, infrastructure, relationships, institutional gravity, the kind of capital that does not need you to show up to work. So, what exactly did Bruce inherit? Wayne Enterprises is the anchor, a sprawling conglomerate with divisions in defense contracting, biomedical research, real estate development, and advanced technology. In the comics, it is explicitly one of the most powerful corporations in the DC universe. Let's start with the defense division. Wayne Aerospace and Wayne Defense produce military-grade hardware, the same category as Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. Real-world defense giants trade at roughly 1.6 times their annual revenue in market value. Apply that multiple to a comparable defense operation, and you are already looking at tens of billions of dollars from this one division alone. Then there is Wayne Biomedical. Pharmaceutical and biotech companies are valued differently, and far more aggressively, because their assets are not factories or aircraft. They are patents, molecules, intellectual property that could become the next blockbuster drug. Biotech firms regularly trade at 4 to 8 times their revenue. A mid-sized pharma arm inside Wayne Enterprises could be worth more on paper than the entire defense division. That is what intellectual property does to a balance sheet. Now add technology. Wayne Tech is canonically responsible for some of the most advanced civilian and military-grade equipment in the DC universe. In the real world, technology companies carry the highest valuations of any sector. A proprietary technology firm with government contracts and no public shareholders could be worth almost anything you want it to be. This is the part that most people miss when they think about Bruce Wayne's money. Wayne Enterprises is not publicly traded. That means no analysts picking it apart, no quarterly earnings calls, no activist investors demanding cost cuts. Private companies can be worth extraordinary amounts, and nobody outside the boardroom ever has to know. Now let's talk real estate. Because in Gotham, Bruce Wayne does not just own property. He owns the city's skyline. Wayne Tower dominates downtown Gotham. A skyscraper of that scale in a major financial city is not just a building. It is a balance sheet entry measured in hundreds of millions, possibly billions of dollars. And then there is Wayne Manor, a sprawling estate outside the city, with its own grounds, its own infrastructure, its own cave system beneath it. Ultra-luxury estates and penthouses in major cities have sold for over $200 million in recent years. Wayne Manor, by any reasonable canonical description, dwarfs those properties. But here's where the story gets genuinely interesting. Bruce Wayne does not just hold assets, he deploys them. In the comics storyline, Batman, No Man's Land. After a catastrophic earthquake devastates Gotham, Bruce Wayne personally finances the rebuilding of large sections of the city. Not a charity donation, not a government grant. One man, writing checks to rebuild urban infrastructure. Think about what that implies about the depth of his liquid reserves. Truly wealthy people, the kind whose net worth is mostly tied up in company equity, often cannot actually spend freely. Their wealth is theoretical. It lives in stock prices and asset valuations. But Bruce, repeatedly in canon, demonstrates the ability to mobilize vast real capital on demand. That is not a billionaire in the conventional sense. That is something structurally different and far more formidable. Forbes, back in 2011, pegged Bruce Wayne's net worth at $6.9 billion. At the time, that made him one of the wealthiest fictional characters ever ranked, but that estimate was made with outdated valuation methods and without fully accounting for private company premiums or the technology assets. Run the numbers today is using current valuation multiples for defense, biotech, and technology firms, and the figure climbs steeply. Conservatively, Wayne Enterprises alone could justify a valuation north of $100 billion. Add the real estate, add the private investments, add the generational capital that has been compounding, untouched and untaxed in foundations and trusts for over a century. You are no longer talking about a billionaire. You are talking about something the financial world barely has language for. In early 2025, the wealthiest person on Earth was estimated to be worth somewhere between $300 and $400 billion. The second wealthiest held somewhere between $200 and $230 billion. These are numbers that emerge from decades of public company equity growth, documented and dissected by thousands of analysts. Bruce Wayne's wealth has never been dissected. It has never been stress tested. It exists in the shadows of private ownership, generational trust structures, and a corporation that answers to no public market. In finance, opacity almost always means the real number is larger than whatever estimate you have seen. The wealthiest individuals on Earth park roughly a quarter of their net worth in prime real estate alone. They allocate another significant chunk to private equity, meaning stakes in companies that are not publicly listed and whose value is almost impossible to verify from the outside. Bruce Wayne's entire empire fits this profile exactly. Every major asset class he holds is the one that is hardest to value, and historically, the one most likely to be underestimated. The structure of his wealth is almost designed to be invisible to outside scrutiny. And yet, despite all of this, Bruce Wayne is, by any observable measure, running a deficit. The wealth flowing in is extraordinary, but so is the wealth flowing out. The Batsuit alone, in real-world material and fabrication costs, runs into the tens of millions of dollars. The vehicles, the cave infrastructure, the global surveillance network, the medical equipment. Forbes once estimated the total cost of Batman's operational toolkit at roughly $80 million, and that was in 2012. That $80 million figure does not account for ongoing maintenance, replacements, or upgrades across decades of operation. Extrapolate it forward, and the cumulative cost of being Batman starts to approach the GDP of a small nation. This is the paradox at the center of the Bruce Wayne story. He is, almost certainly, one of the wealthiest entities ever conceived, fictional or otherwise. And he is spending that wealth as fast as structurally possible to remain a single man fighting crime in a city that seems constitutionally incapable of being saved. The money does not make him powerful. The money makes him possible. There is a difference, and it is a difference that changes how you understand everything else about this story. So, does Bruce Wayne outrank today's real-world billionaires? Here is the honest answer. almost certainly not at the absolute top. A full and transparent accounting of his assets likely places him in the 50 to $150 billion range, wealthy beyond all practical comprehension, but probably not 300 billion. Unless, unless you count the Wayne Foundation's endowment as separate from his personal net worth, unless you credit the generational compounding of pre-industrial landholdings, unless you factor in that Wayne Enterprises, under no regulatory pressure to disclose, may be carrying assets at historical cost that have appreciated by orders of magnitude. In those scenarios, the aggressive but not unreasonable scenarios, the number gets very large, very fast. Fast enough to give even the wealthiest people alive today genuine reason to pause. And this is the deeper point. The reason this exercise matters is not really about Bruce Wayne. It is about what wealth at this scale actually means, and how invisible it becomes when it is old enough, private enough, and complex enough. We started with a cave, a man who could live anywhere on Earth, who by any financial measure should be insulated from every possible threat, choosing to descend into darkness every night. The Wayne fortune is not a symbol of comfort. It is a symbol of what money cannot fix. Bruce Wayne is, in all likelihood, worth more than almost any real person alive. And it has never once been enough to do what he actually wants to do. That is the number that matters, not the billions. The gap between what wealth can buy and what it cannot. That gap, it turns out, is the same size regardless of whether the fortune is fictional or real. And now that you can see it clearly, you will notice it everywhere.